Thank you guys for tuning into Rules of Engagement. Of course, we just saw a cool PvP game about how you can get advantage, but then you have to use that advantage properly. Just hold the contain and expand. Before we jump on to our second segment, let me remind you guys, if you miss any Rules of Engagement episodes, you miss any WCS content, any of the other content we do here at Major League Gaming, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel. YouTube.com/official MLGSC2 has everything we do here on VOD in 1080p quality for free. Also some extra tidbits, comments of the days, play of the days, some cool stuff there if you have a minute or two. They're very, very short videos. You can just get you a little bit of extra awesome SC2 content. So next segment is going to be on a Huck versus XY matchup. And this one, we're going to talk about Immortal timings against Terran. And first, we're going to start off basically talking about the Immortal gateway timings, then how to break and contain in Terran versus Protoss, and then how to use Hellbats in the actual engagement. So we're going to start this replay off at the 6-minute mark. And in this game, in fact, what we have is we have Huck going for that said Immortal gateway timing. And what he's doing is he's going to immediately after one gate expanding, going to get that robotics facility, which is exactly what you want to do if you're going for such a timing. Also notice how his opponent is going for a build where he's going to delay Stimpack. In fact, he's going for a Starport, and he's going to do a Widowmine drop, and then eventually later even a Hellbat drop. Basically, a very type of tech-heavy as far as Widowmines and Medivacs, but not very fast with getting the Stimpack upgrade. So when you're going to do this Immortal Gateway timing, what you always want to do is you always want to try to hit before Stim. You look at the production tab, you see after getting the Robo, just chrono boosting out Immortals like a madman. He doesn't build too many warp gates, right? Because he wants to keep up pro production. This is not an all-in. And he's spending so much money on getting the Immortals, getting the probes, and also constantly warping in units. Early on, he warps in only sentries because that way he'll have energy for when he actually attacks. And once he has about 4 to 5 sentries, or even I think 3 might even be enough, then he's going to just focus on warping into Stalkers. Now, of course, the first step is you have to defend to still timing attack. So the Marines and Widowmines are going to cross the map, and that's where your Photon Arbitrage is nice and handy. Your main army can go to your main base because this attack is never a threat. Photon Arbitrage alone can hold us off without a problem. The threat is always going to be something else. If a Terran at this level attacks you with this force, you have to assume there's something else going on, in which case it's a drop, so his main army is going to be there to affect that without a problem. So going forward now, he realizes, okay, maybe I was going to play this a little bit differently, tech up, but because my opponent showed me this fast with my Medivac, I know their second barracks was delayed, which means their Stimpack is going to be very delayed. And that knowledge is going to be enough to tell him, okay, I can move out and hit before Stim easily, even though my army's not going to be that strong. 2 Immortals, 3 Sentries, and a bunch of Stalkers, with however many Stalkers I can warp in here, with some more coming out of my base. It's going to be strong enough that I can easily break a Terran who doesn't have Stim, who's not ready for this attack. Now the second part of this, notice how he's building a cannon in each of these working lines. It's because he knows the Widowmine drop is a threat. He knows he wants to send his army out to attack, so he has to get that cannon back to defend. Might as well get an upgrade for it as well. And all these things, these cannons, these upgrades, constant probe production, and 3rd and 4th gas, these are going forward because what Huck realizes is he's in a situation where, okay, I want to do this timing, but I can afford to invest in a lot of stuff beyond that because as long as I don't stop my gateway production. These 2 warp gates constantly producing is the only thing that he can do to make the timing stronger at this moment. Any money that he generates that's more than enough to fund these 2 warp gates can go to whatever he wants. Building an extra Immortal at this point would not help his timing. He wouldn't cross the map in time. The only thing he needs to focus on for the timing is the warp gates. Everything else he can just tech up for a later game in case the game doesn't end with this attack. Then, of course, during attack, XY is caught off guard so the force fields can block all those SCVs away. And now the situation where Terran immediately realizes he has to give the low ground. Because, I mean, if you look at his army was 2 Marauders and 3 Marines. I think he had like 4 or 5 Marines. But basically, nothing that can actually match against this. That's because, you know, he was doing the drop earlier. He lost a lot of Marines in the early game. And then also, he's been spending time trying to get the Hellbats and getting all these barracks, right? And in fact, we can see that there is a Hellbat drop on the way over here. So now we're in a situation where Terran realizes he's going to be contained. And against the last game, it's a similar idea to breaking the contain. The best way to always break and contain is to be a threat and a strong enough counterattack that your opponent has to send your army home, right? And the key to doing that is to first make sure, well, I mean, this is a cool little, I mean, you can do some Hellbat drop too when you're at it, but the Hellbat drop's not going to force Huck to run home, right? He can just put Photon Overcharge there. Actually, doesn't have energy, but the cannon and some Stalker weapons can deal with that. It's annoying, it hurts his mineral income, but he's going to be just fine. What XY's first concern is make sure the Protoss can't just walk up the ramp and kill him. Which means he has to give up these buildings here. I mean, maybe he can wait till this next hellback is produced, but then there's no way he can defend his factory because he doesn't have enough range damage. Every time he tries, he's just giving a bunch of free units away. But then, on the same hand, with the SCVs, his opponent can't walk up the ramp because he has enough units he can mob him if he doesn't have the cliff to keep the SCVs away from the units. So now he's thinking, okay, I need to, one, defend my main. That's easy. I mean, if you look at the worker count, he's got plenty of workers. He can defend his main without a problem. The second problem, though, is he needs to launch a counterattack to force Huck to walk home. And what that means is he needs more barracks units, and he needs more medevacs. Because a single Hellbat drop won't force him home. You think, okay, how many warp gates does he have? With this timing, at most he'll have, by this point in the game, at most like 4, maybe 5 warp gates. In fact, if you look at Structures tab, Structures tab, we can see here he only has 2 warp gates. He's building 2 more at the moment. But generally, with the Mothership Core and that amount of units, he can fight off 1 medevac. So what you want to do is you want to wait for 2 medevacs, and then just fill them up with units. And then that will be your counterattack. Unfortunately, if you keep trying to break and contain from the front way, they're going to bleed away a bunch of free units. And then now he's in a situation where he doesn't have enough units to put in those medevacs. Right? If you look at his unit tab, ideally, his counterattack would be 2 Hellbats, 1 Marauder, and 3 Marines. Right? But he's in a situation where he doesn't have that many units at his disposal. If he sends that all those units out after losing more units on the low ground, he may not be able to hold the high ground. So now he has to wait longer. But the same principle still applies. You wait long enough till you can load up enough units to throw out a counterattack, that Huck has to back away. And Huck knows this too. He knows my opponent has medevacs, he's building up an army. He's keeping an eye on the army, and he's going to say, okay, once he has enough that he can hold the high ground and launch a counterattack at the same time, I have to basically retreat. And that's why he's focusing the medevacs. A couple more free SCVs is always nice. Losing 2 Stalkers for medevac and 7 SCVs was not bad for Huck at all. And then again, he has more range damage, so we can just take some more free units here if XY is going to fight him. But eventually, it's taking longer than it should, ideally. But there does come that time when, okay, with enough medevacs, my opponent can launch a counterattack, and I can be in trouble. So Huck says, I'm ahead enough, let's just back away. Let's just back away and take what I can get, right? Because if I hang around here too long, I've already gained advantage. But the longer I wait, the better probability that while my whole army's out there, he'll just pick up everything in medevacs and win in a base race. So unfortunately, it took longer than it should have because XY kind of felt generous and wanted to donate a lot of units. But he was eventually able to break down the ramp, and now we're in a situation where, okay, Huck's way ahead. XY has 1 advantage, though. Yes, Army is not as good as Huck's, right? He's 600 gas cheaper and 1,500 minerals cheaper. Economy, slightly worse than Huck's. And upgrades, of course, Huck's working on 2-2, and he's getting Storm. So he's losing in everything, except he does have a pretty good unit combination. If we look at Huck, what is Huck's competition? Huck's competition is almost all Zealots. If we look at the units tab, he's got 9 Stalkers, 4 Immortals, 18 Zealots. And XY's combination is very Hellbat heavy. So as long as the Hellbats can connect with the Zealots, he's going to be in a good position to take the battle. The 2 things he has to watch out for are 1, the Psy Storms, which are coming up pretty soon, and then 2, making sure the Hellbats battle the Zealots. Now, number 2 isn't really that hard. As long as you attack move, Hellbats and Zealots will both be in the front, you'll be in a fine position. Number 1, what you want to do is you basically want to figure out, depending on your opponent's range damage output, right? Yeah, you have to do this like this basic math, and the math is you look at their range damage output. This many Stalkers, right? The Templar has 80 life. How many units can I break out of my squadron to run forward, right? To run forward this way and go for these Templar as soon as they get to the front and kill that Templar before all the Stalkers kill the units? That's the question Tyrion wants to answer. How many units will it take to kill a Templar before they die to Stalkers? And the reason why that's so important is because obviously you can send your whole army and you can kill a Templar no problem. But the more units you send, the Templar can storm that pack of units and its storm will be efficient. If you just send like 1 Marauder, yes, the Templar can't storm to 1 Marauder, it'll be waste of a storm, but the Stalkers will kill him before they kill a Templar. So it's a very fine balancing act. Enough units to threaten a Templar, enough the Templar has to burn the storm, but not enough that the storm is going to be very efficient. Now, late game, you can't do this technique. Once there's Colossi and a whole bunch of units, you try to run units forward, they'll be massacred. I mean, you can do the Templar out of position. That's what you should be looking to do. But this is where it can really decide the game because he doesn't have EMPs. So going forward, the only way to deal with Templar is to try to make sure they can't land storms on the massive bulk of his army, which means using a small squad to distract him. So right here, he sees Templar, his whole army here. He needs to back away most of his army, which is exactly what he's going to do. Back away, then he brings a small segment to focus on his Templar. And this is a segment large enough that the Templar have to use the storms or else they would die. Right? You can see it even did die afterwards. The storms are decent, but the bulk of XY's army is still alive. So now step 2 comes into play where he has to think 2 things. Okay, my opponent has way more units than me. I have 2 advantages. 1, if I can fight behind the command center, it'll take some of the damage. And then 2, the Hellbats should beat the Zealots. So, I mean, he's behind enough, they may not, but if the Hellbats can connect with the Zealots, they'll have a decent chance. Now, unfortunately, we're never going to find out because he drops the Hellbats on the Stalkers and Immortals, and then so the Zealots kill, there's only 2 Hellbats to fight the Zealots, and they kill the Bio, and the Stalkers and Immortals kill the Hellbats, and that's kind of the end of it. But the general idea is, if you're behind, we have a competitional advantage, right? So, I mean, this game's over, obviously, Huck wins. There is always sometimes a way to come back if the battle goes perfectly for you, but you got to make sure it goes that way. So a couple of things to take from this game, the most important things. 1, if you're a Protoss going for an early time attack. An early time attack is one that does not involve Archons, Colossi, or High Templar. Those are your mid-game power units. A time attack that hits before any one of those 3 units, whether just pure gateways, Gateway Void Ray, Gateway Immortal, basic combat units without any ability to just instantly kill a whole lot of units. Those type of early attacks, the ideal time to hit is before stim. So if you can get a read on when there's stims going on, you can hit before then, that's exactly when you want to hit. As a Terran player, remember, if you're going to build Hellbats, ideally use them for 2 purposes. 1 is to tank damage, they're the best tanks in the game of any race. And then 2 is to kill the Zealots. So it can be cool to use them in medevacs, and you see a lot of pros. Pick them up in medevacs, drop them on the army. You'll see the pros do it for basically one reason against Protoss, and that's as part of an all-in time attack, and they want to kill the sentries. If you're in a battle where there's no sentries, you never want to put those guys in medevacs and drop them on an army. You only want to use them in attack. Sentries are the only reason you load them up. Maybe in some weird situations, Templar too, but pretty much just sentries. Otherwise, use them attack move. Terran versus Terran, they'll pick them up because you want to bridge the range gap and use the speed of medevac to get them close to Marines, things like that. But against Protoss, if the sentries aren't a big deal, keep them on the ground. The Hellbats will fight better that way. They'll be fighting from the start of the battle instead of only coming in midway into battle. They'll tank the damage, which they're meant to tank. And also, even more importantly, your medevacs will be healing during the battle. If you use the medevacs that drop, they're not healing while they're dropping. So, much more important to use those Hellbats just in your actual army against a Zealot-heavy competition. So wraps up our second segment. We'll take a short break and be right on to our third segment.